I just turned one of my crappiest games into a much better version that is actually fun. It now has a lot of cool new stuff, like new maps and enemies, and a unique mechanic that was definitely missing in the old game. So let's get to it. So this is the original game from a few years back, and it might look okay at first, but in reality it is actually pretty bad, and I'll tell you why. So first point is that the game is actually pretty basic, like you just go through the level, you jump some spikes, dodge some enemies, and then you just cross the finish line and you're done. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but to be fair, the controls are also pretty awful. Like the gravity is all messed up, and for some reason the jump button only works once every 3 times. Is just a bug that I never fixed for some reason. But the worst of all is that the gameplay outright sucks. As if being basic and having awful controls wasn't enough, when you die you just go back to the beginning of the entire game. And the 3 lives that you had in the beginning, they do not refuel, just because I did not think of that. But since it's been years since I last touched it, and I learned a lot since then, I wanted to know if I could actually make this thing fun. So I started by deleting it. The original plan was to keep working on the same project, but it was so old and full of bugs that it was actually easier to scrap it entirely and start from scratch. So I started by creating a new project, added everything I had in the previous game, like some basic movements, spikes, enemies, and then with that out of the way I could start adding more cool stuff like the new maps, better art, and an actual story. So starting with the story, the premise of the game is that you're a little boy who gets lost in an underground cave and has to find your way back home by climbing this cave back to the surface. Yeah, I know it's not super original, but hear me out. So this boy has to find his way back home by climbing up this cave, but in order to climb this cave, the player needs a way to climb it, because for now the only thing the player can do is jumping, which is pretty basic, let's agree with that. So pretty much like in Celeste, you can dash to climb this Celeste mountain. This game needs to give the player a way to climb this cave. But I didn't want to outright steal Celeste mechanics, because I already stole Undertale's setting. I mean, I got inspired by Undertale. That's what I said. So just like that, I decided that the only way for the player to escape this cave was to climb it with the help of a grappling hook. Cause all kids carry grappling hooks around for emergencies, I think. Anyways, I started planning the grappling hook mechanic, and the first thing that came to mind was to let the player use it like a rope swing. This way you could just throw the grappling hook around, make it grapple to something, and just swing through the levels. That should be super easy to make, right? The initial attempts were so buggy that I almost decided to scrap the entire grappling hook idea again. So I had to spend countless hours on tutorials that never did what I wanted, until I surrendered to learn elementary school physics to finally get to this. And it kinda works fine. I'm actually a little impressed that it works. But there was not a lot to throw the grappling hook at, so the next step was to create some levels. So for the first level I created some pixel art for the tile maps and started placing each tile individually. And that process took so long just to create the first prototype level that by the end of it I was very much inclined to commit a crime. And so for the first time in my life I decided to actually use my brain power and make a small system to figure out what tiles go next to each other. And so with that I don't have to keep switching these tiles manually anymore. Ignore this little guy over here, it's fine. Then I created some basic background art, split it into a couple different layers, and made each layer move at different speeds just to give the illusion of depth. And finally, to add some challenge to the levels, I brought back some obstacles we had before, like some spikes and enemies. And the final step was to give it a little more life with plants, fog, and some minor details just to make the scenario come alive. And after a couple of days just tweaking and fixing stuff, it was finally starting to look like an actual level. I repeated the same steps to create different environments, and in just a couple more days we had 4 different ones. We had the ancient forest, a dark cave, the crystal lakes, and what for now is my favorite one, the lava dungeon. For the spikes I made them a little cuter this time, but they essentially work in about the same way, which is to say if you touch one of them you are dead. Except that taking the player back to the beginning would be incredibly infuriating. I think it doesn't make sense in these new levels just because they are much larger. So instead of going back to the beginning, you are now brought up to the last checkpoint that you got, which is for now represented by this tiny little flag over here. And along the same lines, I also made sure the respawns were super fast, so you can try again in less than 1 second or so without having to wait for one of those long and annoying game over screens. And just like that, you could traverse entire levels using the grappling hook and avoiding spikes. It was actually starting to feel fun to play. Now I still have tons of cool and exciting stuff I have not revealed in this video, but for now I'll let you know that the game is available on Steam and you can wishlist it now. I'm calling it Liam's Journey and you can't play it yet because it's not ready, but I'm working on a free demo, so make sure to wishlist it on Steam to get notified when the free demo is out. I'll leave a link in the description in case you want to check it out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye for now.